of Lisbon is so long. What purpose does it serve?
Well, the purpose that it serves is to transfer over 60 areas of sovereignty from the member states to Brussels. And unfortunately, what it doesn't do is it doesn't provide corresponding accountability back to the citizens whose sovereignty has been transferred. The other thing that it does is it creates a president of Europe, a president of the European Council that will represent you and everybody that's watching this from Europe on the global stage, but this person will never need to ask you or any of us for a vote. I have a problem with that because that's not democratic, it's not democracy. And the European Union is too good, too valuable and precious a thing. It's been at minimum the most successful peace process in the history of the world, but it's been much more than that. And it is disappointing to see a small elite in Brussels grab power very greedily, taking it away from the citizens of Europe, while at the same time not wanting to give us any voice in how Europe makes laws and conducts itself. More than 80% of law now, of new law in every year in every member state now comes from Brussels. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is that the people who are making these rules, that where they are being initiated from, these people are not elected, they're not accountable. I think that the European Union needs to be fixed. I think it needs to be seriously reformed. I think that if we are to have a president of Europe, that person should have to be elected. The Lisbon Treaty was a rewrite of the European Constitution that the French and the Dutch already said no to. Sarkozy, after the French voted no, in his presidential election campaign, he said, in place of the European Constitution, I will deliver instead a mini-treaty. Instead of delivering a mini-treaty, he delivered something that's over 8,000 words longer than the Constitution. So what they did is they said, oh, we have a problem, this is actually longer now. You said it would be a mini-treaty. So they made the type font size smaller, and they closed the line spacing in the document so it was 60 pages shorter. They're taking us for complete idiots, all of us. The people of Poland, the people of Ireland, the people of Britain, the people of France, the people of Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Hungary, Bulgaria, Spain, Portugal, Sweden, Denmark and everywhere else. They're taking us for absolute bloody fools. And I know Europe and I know many Europeans, and one thing that they are not, that we are not, are fools. We know the European Union's good. We know a good idea, we know we want it to work, but we like democracy. We all fought too hard for democracy. So many millions died to ensure that Europe was democratic. You, on this side of that Iron Curtain, you fought, your family suffered so that you could be free, so that you could bring your children up in a democratic society. And I'm damned if I'm going to have a small elite in Brussels take that right away from my children or your children or anybody else. That's a decision that we need to make at a ballot box, and that's why we're doing what we're doing, and that's why the Lisbon Treaty is bad. Now the problem is that Poland isn't given a referendum. The French voted no in big numbers, the Dutch voted no, the Irish voted no. And yet all of our votes are being treated with contempt. They're saying we're carrying on anyway. We're going to go ahead with this. If the French, the Dutch and the Irish are their democracies are being treated with contempt, do you think Poland's going to be any different? Of course not. Do the Austrians think Austria's going to be any different? Do the Italians think Italy's going to be any different? No. There's a very clear message for us all. So it's time for us to listen, pay attention, because this June we have something called the European elections for the European Parliament. And this may well be the last chance that we all have to send a very clear message to Brussels that is not Eurosceptic, that is not anti-European, that is not saying we don't want the European Union anymore, we want to withdraw, but that says we need to fix this thing, we need to fix it now, we need to make it democratic, accountable. If we are going to have a constitution, a fundamental treaty, it needs to be short, it needs to be readable, and everybody needs to get a vote on it. I would say it should be no more than 25 pages. If there's going to be a president of the European Union, that's something that voters need to decide that they want, and if they do want it, that person should have to face an election and be accountable to all of us at a ballot box. Now, if that sounds Eurosceptic or radical to you, then I don't know where I live anymore. I think that's a very moderate, reasonable position. I think what's radical are people saying, you voted the wrong way, vote again. Hugo Chavez is saying that right now in Venezuela. They had a referendum, an election. He wanted to be able to continue on in office in perpetuity, to be re-elected. The people voted no in Venezuela. Now he's saying they're going to have another vote. Brussels is saying the Irish have to do the same thing. What are we, turning into Venezuela? I mean, come on, where are we? Are we in Europe? Is this the cradle of civilization? It is. And I know in my heart that the people of Europe are going to do something about this, and they're going to do something about it in June.
Okay, and what do you think about UPR? It's a conservative federal party, and it's anti-European indeed. And what role of workplace can you see in your movement?
Well, we're not Libertas is not anti-European, and there are many views, there are many voices across Europe. What we are saying is we want Europe to be democratic. That way, people who are against it, people who are for it, people who are somewhere in the middle, everyone gets to have a say. That's democracy, that's the way it works. So I'm not an anti-European. I don't think I'll ever be anti-European. I certainly hope the circumstance never arrives. I'd rather be inside the system, inside the European Union, making sure that this thing survives. Because, let me put it this way, I mean, when I look at the European Union, I see something that has been at minimum the most successful peace process in the history of the world. If it were just for that reason alone, and that's a huge achievement, it's worth fixing, saving and building upon. But it's been much more than just the most successful peace process in the history, the most successful peace process in the history of the world. It's been much more than that. And so parties or groups that are anti-European, we don't have an awful lot in common with them, but what I think we do have in common with a lot of people, and including people from that perspective, is that they are saying they want a democratic and accountable European Union, and on that I can agree with them.
What do you think about a conflict between the Czech President Václav Klaus with the European Parliament members?
With Cohen-Bendit and,
yes.
and that bunch of clowns?
Yes.
I think it was an absolute disgrace. I think it just, the sheer arrogance of that event, the sheer arrogance, it's breathtaking, really it's breathtaking. That those people go in there to the president of a country, of a sovereign country, and berate him and take control of his castle and tell him who he can and can't take questions from and run the meeting and allow the most outrageous, ridiculous, oppressive questions to be asked. I mean, for Cohen-Bendit, Daniel Cohen-Bendit, if your viewers want to find out who he is, maybe read the book he wrote about himself. A very interesting book. This is a guy that was standing on the barricades, throwing things and at French policemen in 1968, the year I was born.
Almost terrorist.
You know, I'll say this. When I'm being attacked by Daniel Cohen-Bendit, when he's saying that I must have some foreign agenda or, you know, be somehow working, I'm too friendly with the Americans or anything, when he's attacking me, when he's attacking Václav Klaus, that's a good measure of knowing that you're doing something right. Because he is a very strange individual, very strange, very odd, and he's not a Democrat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.